I'll be honest, I don't know how many people care about the Academy Awards nowadays. It seems audiences have been dwindling in the past decade, and I have some trouble remembering who won Best Picture in the last few years. However, a nomination for the Oscars can be a huge push for visibility and distribution for films that don't traditionally get much coverage. In the case of international films, it can help to bring pictures to a much wider audience. This category is quite different from the others in the sense that each country selects one picture as a candidate for nomination and then the Academy selects the final nominees. In the past, films in languages other than English were usually relegated for this category. But this year is different. Past Lives and Anatomy of a Fall, although partially spoken in English, are nominated for Best Picture. And Zone of Interest is nominated for both International Film and Best Picture. Maybe it's because American audiences are becoming less scared of closed captions. Maybe it's because streaming has allowed for international productions to be more available to American audiences. Maybe the producers behind these films just ran a really good campaign. For whatever reason, it seems films in languages other than English are taking over the Oscars this year. So, to honor that interesting turn of events, I wanted to review the best international film nominees and try to predict who might actually win. I'll start with the ones I liked the least to my favorite one. As usual, just be aware there will be spoilers ahead. First, my least favorite one, Society of the Snow. This film is about the true story of an amateur rugby team from Uruguay who crashed in the Andes Mountains in 1972. Although most passengers died as a result of the crash, injuries, cold or hunger, 16 survived, in part because they resorted to cannibalism. This film tells their story. It is very well made, don't get me wrong, and I actually really like survival and disaster films, so I enjoyed watching this film. But it's kind of a standard Hollywood picture. Compared to the other films of this list, it is easily forgettable. What is remarkable is the story of the survivors of the crash and their ordeal. But this film does not really add much for those who already know the story. It tries to have a philosophical approach, but I don't know, I wasn't very convinced. Second, Io Capitano. This one is trickier. It tells the story of two Senegalese teenagers, Seydou and Moussa, who leave their hometown Dakar with the goal of reaching Europe. They go through several countries in the Sahara Desert to do so as they struggle with corrupted border officials and migration mafias. I think for people who don't read much about migration, this film will cause a deep impression on them. It is also very well acted by these two Senegalese guys, and I believe it is even their first role. It's commendable that the film tries to depict the journey accurately, the several languages used, the landscapes, and so on. But the film suffers from aiming for realism, but without any context. He tries to present the journey of Seydou and Moussa as a kind of epic story and shies away from political perspective. That would be fine, but then the film is presented as a sort of the film about migration. And that's where it gets icky, because one of the aspects in the film that really bothered me is how Seydou and Moussa want to reach Europe to escape poverty, and the people who seem hindering their journey are only other Africans, the border agents, the smugglers, the torturers, and once they are in Italian waters, it looks as if they'll finally be rescued. But Europe has actually invested a lot to keep people like Seydou and Moussa out of it. The reason why they are at the hands of traffickers and smugglers is because there are no legal routes. But that is never addressed, so for me it seemed like Europeans were a bit like saviors when actually were the reason why these mafias make so much money off migrants in the first place. Secondly, in terms of storytelling, I never really got to know Seydou or Moussa. They are supposed to be the heroes of this epic journey, but they don't have enough personality in my view to be the protagonists. So this is really a story about migration that happens to use Seydou and Moussa as the faces of that journey, but doesn't really flesh out that human face. Third, Teacher's Lounge. This one is about a school in Germany where thefts are happening and some students are being accused of committing them. A teacher, Carla Novak, decides to get involved when a Turkish student is accused unfairly and manages to uncover the true thief, but the process in which she does it and how the school handles that revelation makes her struggle with her ideals. This film for me is very cleverly written and it turns a really banal story into a riveting thriller. Initially, I thought it would be yet another European film about the dismal public school system and the racism against the immigrant kids, but it actually subverts expectations in an interesting way, and it ends up being a lot more about how doing the right thing might actually lead to disastrous consequences. It is very well acted, especially by the main character and the kids. I might be biased because I love films about ethical dilemmas and character-driven stories, but I really enjoyed this one. Fourth, Zone of Interest. It's hard to say I liked Zone of Interest. I thought it was one of the most sinister films I have ever seen. I was uncomfortable all the time I was watching it, and I think that is exactly what they were going for. The film, if you don't know, is about the family life of Auschwitz commander Rudolf Höss and how his wife Edwig is determined to make their house right next to the death camp their dream home. As you see Edwig engaged with domestic tasks, bossing the maids around as the lady of the house she has become, you can hear shrieks and gunshots from the camp. Characters comment on the smell and the unsettling noises at night. The ashes from the dead are used to fertilize their luxurious gardens. The jewelry and clothes from the Jewish people are distributed in the household. Her husband is obsessed about the efficiency of the death machine and casually muses and daydreams about how to kill as many people as possible. In one of the most poignant scenes, Edvig shows off her house to her mother, who we discover used to be the housekeeper of a Jewish woman. The servant has risen to master, and it doesn't matter if it's right next door to a death camp. It's her kingdom, and she will lavishly enjoy ruling over it. There is so much more that could be said about this film, but I think it's really something you need to experience for yourself. We know throughout history people of privilege have always ignored the suffering of those below, especially if we're talking about slavers and colonizers, for example, but it takes a very special kind of person to live next to a daily massacre and actually enjoy it. The cinematography, which tends to display the perfect garden and the geometrical symmetry of the house, only makes everything even more unsettling. Every frame is perfect if you ignore what is going on around it. I honestly think that Zone of Interest might win just because of the subject matter, and I think it is a very good film. But my favorite one is Perfect Days. Perfect Days from acclaimed director Wim Wenders is a masterpiece. I haven't talked to a single person who has not seen the film and left the cinema mesmerized. It's one of those films without a story, so to speak. We just follow the protagonist, Hiraima, who is quite content about being a toilet cleaner in Tokyo, and strives to find beauty in everyday life. He's not depicted as a sad loner, nor is he a happy fool. He has good days and bad days. He's not shown as an example to emulate, some kind of guru who has achieved nirvana. He's just a normal guy who managed to find happiness. And we follow him as he goes about his days, listening to music, reading books, working and interacting with people. And somehow Wim Wenders makes this quite ordinary setup absolutely beautiful and moving. It's hard to explain because this is also a film you need to experience yourself, but I can say it's the closest to a hug in film form I've ever felt. You really feel like you are being given the deepest, most empathetic hug, reassuring you that everything will be alright and that life can be wonderful. I wish it becomes the winner of the Oscar this year for Best International Film. I don't think it will happen, but I think it deserves it and really stands out as the best cinematic achievement of the year. And those are my thoughts. And how about you? Who do you think will win? Which of these films made the biggest impression on you? Let's continue this conversation down below in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching!